Welcome to Taiwan Blend, and today we have a really, really special guest. And hey, I'd like to say hello to my good old co-host there. How you doing, John? What's up?
Hey, James. Well, today we've got a good one. We've got an educator, trainer, consultant, writer of many, many books with a wide, diverse variety of degrees and certificates from institutes and universities such as Michigan, Notre Dame, Syracuse. I practice it. I think I got it right. He's lived in Taiwan for 30 years, has had his fingers in many pies here, and allow me to introduce Dr. Jerome Keating.
Yeah,
Dr. Keating, welcome.
Welcome to the show.
It is so great to have you on the show. I'm really looking forward to what's going to be a very interesting conversation tonight that can go anywhere. I do believe that we could literally have 365-hour-long shows and still not even cut into a little bit of your knowledge. But let's begin and tell us what brought you to Taiwan. How did you get here?
Okay. Well, first, I want to say I like that idea. I had my fingers in many pies. That's a nice metaphorical way. It gives me leeway.
A lot of leeway.
A lot of leeway.
Okay. But I came here, I was offered a job as technology transfer manager on the Taipei MRT.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a little backstory to that. It took me about a month to decide to accept the contract. It wasn't the money, but I was leaving the U.S. I was divorced at the time. My kids were in high school, so I felt they were old enough to, be, with their mother and on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was still leaving my network, all my friends, everything I knew. I had wanted to work overseas always, but just was going back and forth. And though it took me a month to decide, I talked to people. I was working on an MBA at the time, and I talked to everyone. They said, take the job, take the job.
Yeah, we all hear that, right? Take the job.
Take the money.
Take the money.
Don't look back.
But after a month, I decided, and I have no regrets. Now, I'll tell you one little story. Though on the plane over, I had an interesting flight to Taipei because I left Dallas, but the flight had come from New York to Dallas and was going to Portland, to Seoul, and then to Taipei. So one thing, never let other people arrange your schedule for you.
Yep, for real.
Yeah.
The company did it, and I didn't know anything at the time. But on the plane coming from New York were a bunch of Korean merchant marine guys. Now, they had been on a long journey from Seoul or wherever in Korea all the way to New York, about 6 months at sea. So
yeah, very lonely. Yeah.
They were heading home, and they were partying up. They were
having a blast.
They were drunk as hell on the plane.
Yeah, fun time.
Yeah. So we flew from Dallas to Portland. And then on Portland, we had a 5-hour layover. I was lucky because one of my sisters lives in the area, so I had people to visit with. But a couple of them tried to jump ship. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Literally.
Right. They just kind of disappeared into the airport,
Oh.
And I don't know if they ever caught him or not. But the rest of them then were, by the time we went on the plane from Portland to Seoul, they were already asleep because they had been drinking
they
so
partied
much.
out by that time.
Way out by that time, right?
But for me, I always remember this because now I arrived on October 6, 1988. That's burned in my memory. But on the way about 2 or 3 hours out of Portland, I got this panic attack And I basically was just, thinking I was going here, and I said, "What the hell are you doing? You're leaving everything behind, etc., going to a new place." And for about 15 minutes, I had sheer panic, but I couldn't jump out of the plane.
No.
I couldn't
no
beg,
turning back at that point, right?
I was
That would be a
committed.
good idea. Yeah, committed.
But once it passed, then it was okay.
Did you have anything to help make it pass? It's like, okay, look, I need a whiskey now.
Oh, I knew he was going to get into that. I knew he was going to suggest that.
No, just the normal drinks on a plane or something. And but we got to Seoul, and the Olympics had just been in
Oh,
Seoul
that's right.
that year. So there was stuff all over the airport. And I met a guy in the airport, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to Taipei." He was coming from there. And I said, "Tell me a little about it. What can I expect?" And he said, "Well, motor scooters."
Oh, yes, for real.
Oh, the scooters, right?
They're
'cause
everywhere.
at that time, most Taiwanese didn't yet have a car.
Mm-hmm.
In the 90s, everyone started buying cars. But in the late 80s, it was mainly motor scooters. And he was right.
And they didn't know about helmets either.
Oh, yeah.
no,
What are
They,
those
they weren't
things?
a thing, right?
Yeah, I remember back in the days you had these little Vespa things. You remember the little Vespas?
Oh, yeah.
Oh man,
No.
those were great. And then we had those Sanyangs. Those things never break. My first Sanyang, I got rid of it, and the best way I can just get rid of it was just leave it parked and never come back to get it.
Yeah, just abandon it, right?
You
I'm
did
done.
the same thing.
I'm done. You're out.
We're some bad representations of foreigners here. You see that? But not you. But not you.
Not me. No, I was a good guy.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll go with that. We'll
Yeah,
run with
okay.
that narrative for a little while. So, tell us, get into the experience of starting the MRT. What was? Give us one really amazing thing about that, and one thing like, oh my God.
Yeah, the oops effect.
Yeah, the oops.
Okay, I'm going to give one more story first.
Okay.
On my way from the airport into Taipei,
Yeah.
because when I was growing up, everything was made in Taiwan.
Oh yeah.
So
MIT.
I was expecting to find a countryside loaded with factories. And my impression on the bus going in from the airport, they picked me up, but it was, where the hell are all the factories?
Yeah.
Now everything's made in China, but
Yep.
you at that time, if you were in the U.S. before that was before China opened up.
Yeah.
And everything now is made in
everything
China.
we turned upside down, made in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Right.
The good old MIT, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So how did you take on from there? Yeah, I have to find out, not everything is, everything MIT, but, things has changed over time, right?
Right. No, tremendous. Because at that time, they were starting to go to China, but it was still just more in Taiwan investing even in China to make factories there or have things built. But back to the MRT. Okay, the MRT was got a lot of interesting stories, and one will be why do we have the Brown Line?
I've got a good question about the Brown Line. I need you to confirm a rumor.
A rumor. I gotta hear this.
Later.
Okay. I really want to hear this about the Brown Line, though.
We'll get into this.
So,
Yeah.
but go ahead.
But the Brown Line, it's the only light rail. Everything else is heavy rail.
Yeah.
And it's only four-car train. Everything else is 8-car train. But it was the first one to open. Now, there's a couple background stories to that one, there were 2 proposals for the MRT, one by the Ministry of Transportation and one by the city of Taipei. The Ministry of Transportation won out, and they were the heavy rail, but they made a concession. They couldn't just say to the city of Taipei, your proposal is worth
Oh, we're going to bleep that out. Beep, beep.
And so they included the Brown line. Now, also, of course, at the time, because part of my job was to oversee all technology and that, and therefore I could treat Matra.
Mm-hmm.
And Matra was kind of like a people mover, more, they wanted to get it overseas. It was more like, at Disney World, you moved from here to there and then. But they were really pushing hard. Now, one of the stories of why Matra got there, and I know for a fact that Matra was not the low bid. These things are bid, and you're supposed to take the lowest bid and all that. Now, the rumor, and I'll just say rumor, and anyone who remembers the Lafayette figure scale can filter that.
Oh, that's a lot of filtering, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, Matra also was the company that made Exocet missiles.
Oh, that's right.
And
that's
they
big news.
had been used in the Argentinian-UK war.
Ah, right. By which side?
By the
right.
Argentinians.
By the
Yeah.
Argentinians, they got their hands on
They
them,
took
right?
out a couple of Brit ships, as I remember.
Yeah.
And this is just a rumor that the military had made a side deal with Matra for technology that would, be provided under the table.
It's just an incentive to give us a little special. Am I right?
Right.
Yeah.
And which is interesting because the Lafayette frigate thing also was dealt with the French, which
Yes.
the Faguaren, I don't know.
I don't know.
There's a lot of hongbao passing between people in these deals, right? Just
But that's just rumor. I'll just leave
that's
that
rumor.
as...
Oh, that's right. This is rumor. It's just a rumor. Okay.
Right.
rumor with the
Yeah.
rumor.
Rumor.
Yeah. Now, another story of the thing was that normally when you build an MRT, you start with a very simple north, south, east, west, very short lines, and then you add on and add on. And someone had the bright idea, and I'm not sure which side, or maybe it was both sides, and said, well, why should we waste all that time of adding on? Let's start everything at once. We'll be done quicker, have the whole thing up and running.
Yeah, the multitasking type of thing, right? Yeah.
Very good in theory.
Better.
Yeah, it is better. Right?
But if you were in Taipei in the early 90s, when all the digging was going on, the whole place was really...
I remember. Yeah. But just to tack on here, you saw a lot of growth, at that time, and just talk a little bit more about the growth that you've seen after first getting here way back in the day. What pops into your mind at least immediately when we talk about the word growth of Taiwan, the physical aspect of the growth of Taiwan first.
Okay. Maybe I'll focus first on Taipei.
Oh, cool.
And I'll relate a story of one of my co-workers, Bob Weir, who was head of transportation. And we were talking about that the Brown Line, went all the way out to Nangang through Nehu. And at that time, there was nothing there. Nothing there. And, everyone's saying, why the hell are you taking an MRT to these empty fields? You go out there right now.
Oh, it's Crowd City, right?
Those people who owned land out there at that time.
Oh, Fatai.
They made it.
Fatai.
People, I know they keep land out there because it still used to be badly affected by the typhoons.
Yeah.
So they'd keep a little tiny house out there for the typhoon insurance.
Yeah, the Donghu and all
so
that.
every time a typhoon went through there, washed out. Oh, okay, there we go. We just made $200,000 for doing nothing.
Yeah, and even AIT has their headquarters out there now.
Right now, in the old driving zone, these instructors, you go there to get your driver's license, and all these big truckers go out there to get their driver's license and end up with a female a trainer, which kind of like shut them up real quick. But yeah, that was back in the day, man. Wow.
Right. So now another story was our first offices were over by Min Shen Dun Lu, Dunhua Beilu, but then we shifted over to Keelung and Chungshao.
Mhm.
Now, right now, that city, that's everything's built up. W Hotel, everything over there. At that time, we were on the corner, would be the southeast corner of Chungshao and Keelung.
Mhm.
And we just had our Quonset hut offices. The only other building in the area was the Hyatt Hotel. Everything else was empty fields. So I remember once there was a typhoon, and I was looking out the window, and things were blowing all over those fields from where the Hyatt Hotel still is.
Still is.
But it was just empty field. Now, you go there now,
It's one of the most developed parts of Taipei.
Yeah, no place to park your motorcycle.
Yeah. But they still have these remains, little tiny
Yeah, there's still
plots.
little
They're like
spots,
3
right.
pin
This-
plots of vegetables. in the middle of that.
The most expensive vegetables are grown right there in that area, right? That's just creepy.
Yeah. So those are some of the big changes that I clearly remember. And the city just grew and grew and grew.
So the thing I wanted to know about the MRT, and because when I got here in 2000, somebody told me that you've got technology building and that MRT does that weird turn, right? And it looks like an add-on. Now, people told me that when they built the MRT and they got through the planning and construction stage, but at that corner was pretty much a right angle.
I mean,
Which-
the one
which-
at Fuxing and
The first thing I know the person who actually did the math for that. To
Yeah,
actually, I know the person personally.
Yep, it starts at technology building and then goes around. It's kind of got a funny angle on it,
Yeah.
a funny shape.
Yeah,
And I understood that they built that with pretty much a right angle in it. So when they ran the train down for the first time, just got there and couldn't make it around. So can you confirm, deny that rumor that?
Okay, now that
what's
I
the deal with
had
the funkiness of that corner?
I had gone by then. In other words, my contract with Taipei was 88 to 90. So it was a 2-year contract, which another backstory. Because remember I was telling you, it took me a long while to decide it. And the company promised me a big bonus if I would finish my contract. So it was a 2-year contract, and I said, "Oh, okay, I think I can hang on for 2 years." Yeah, now 30 friggin' years later, I'm still here.
Oh, just holding on, huh? Just holding on.
Just holding on. Still deciding, is it worth it?
Is it
Shall
still
I go
worth
back?
it? Oh, it's a hard decision.
Right. But so to your story, I was down in Kaohsiung on their MRT when those things were still being planned, and so I, on that right turn and all it wasn't even built at that time.
Oh, right. Well, it wasn't up at that time. So
Yeah.
we're just going to have to put that one back in the rumor box and try and find someone else who
You
can
can't hide that.
confirm or deny that,
Can't
that
hide that
story.
one. But I'm gonna pick up on that later. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so I'm going to pass responsibility on anything on that.
Oops.
But I'll give you another story. What's kind of interesting, just a little more human interest story. Because Matra and Dortch, Department of Rapid Transit System, we were consultants, American Transit consultants. We worked with Dortch, Department of Rapid Transit System. Matra, was contracted for the Brown Line. And so part of my job is to critique Matra and the Brown Line. So one time, the head guy from Dortch, we went over to the Matra offices, and so they were always at, finances and everything, and he's ripping into the French guys. He's saying, "You guys are ripping us off. This quality is bad. This is bad. This is, he's going on him for about 15, 20 minutes. And then he says, "Okay, now So the French guys are really getting pissed because they've had to been sit there taking it.
Have to take it. Yeah.
And then he says, "Okay, now I'm going to have to leave the meeting, but I'll leave Dr. Keating in charge."
Oh, that's cool. That's wrong. Oh, that's wrong.
I'm thinking, yeah, what'd you drop in my lap?
Where's that come from? So then did they start hurling insults back at you? Did they start hurling insults?
They didn't take it out too much on me, the rest of the meeting went I ended it very quickly.
Yeah, and how did you do that?
So
how did you do that? How do you end this type of meeting?
Well, I listened to them, let them vent a little bit, and then said, I think we can wrap this up.
Yeah, that was probably what it was out. Yeah, that was probably what it was. Let them vent.
So 2 years in, you're out of your contract, and you now clearly have an option to go home or stay. What was the thing that made you stay?
Yeah, and this is what I would like to get more about, also more about the growth of Taiwan too, after you've seen from your experience with the, the MRT lines and the brown lines and all that stuff, because it's fun to most people when they see it from people like have been here long, like you and I.
Right. Well, what made me say was that when you're on, my contract ended, so I was working under Bechtel Engineering at the time, and there were 3 companies at the Parsons Brinkerhoff, Kaiser Engineering, and Bechtel. We were American Transit Consultants, but we were like the top 15% of the project, and then all the other areas had many other companies. So one of them was Duluth Cather International, and they were working on a couple of the stations and things, but then they had bid on the Kaohsiung MRT. And Bechtel had also bid on that, but Duluth Cather won the thing. But on these, when you're with a company, and usually it's contract work, so when your contract ends, they will say goodbye if they don't have another contract for you. Yeah. So you're always keeping your ears and eyes open for other ones.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
And Duluth Cather was bidding down there, and they asked me to be on their team as technology transfer manager. And so I said, sure, And so that they got that contract, and that led to the next thing, which was, down in Kaohsiung for a year on their MRT doing the same thing. And from there, I was going, again, another company, Morrison Knudsen, asked me to be on their team for the high-speed rail. So I'm thinking, wow, baby, I get on that high-speed rail, that's gravy train.
That's great, the gravy train, because that's going to take forever to complete.
Right. I'm thinking, there's 5 years at a good salary. But if you know the history of that, Morrison Knudsen got the bid, but then there was some combination of finances and this and that, and it went into limbo. Now, at that time, I had also gotten married, Monica, my wife.
Yeah.
And so, I was, kind of committed here, and I was decided, well, I'll stay around to see, if the bid resurfaces. And I started teaching at Chinese Culture University, Huanhua Dashue. Mm-hmm. And then the bid did resurface, or was rebid again, and the French and Germans, TGV, ICE, got it. They team up overseas. But again, you could see that the bid was, finances weren't quite being worked out. There was, going back and forth.
Chabador.
And it went into limbo.
Chabador.
Right.
Yeah, Chabador.
Right. And finally, the Japanese got the bid. Oh. And this is just rumor again, or thought, or, you can call it sour grapes or anything, but we just kind of figured the Japanese knew who to pay.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
I didn't really say that.
But this is just a rumor.
Just a rumor.
Just a rumor.
But anyway, so they did a good job, of course, on it. But I was thinking, God, that was my gravy train. But anyway, I was then into the university system, and I taught for about 8 years at Wanhua Dashway, and then I decided the national schools have a better retirement plan, so I switched to Taipei Dashway.
Taidan.
So I want to get into a little bit, talk about Monica. May she rest in peace.
Yes.
She recently passed, but can we talk a little bit about that story, how you met? What's the love story?
It's beautiful.
That's a real Yan Fen story.
Yeah, Yuan Fen, very good. Okay, high five. That's right.
Need to call you Han Hao.
That's right.
Because after I got here, so I get here October 6th, okay? Now, 10/10 is coming up.
It's my actual anniversary for arriving in the country.
But I had, since I was manager level, and there was all the bigwigs from the 3 companies, Bechtel, Parsons, Brinckerhoff, and Kaiser were here, and they wanted to report, a status report on my division. So my luggage was tied up in customs. I had slacks, a shirt and tie, but I didn't have a jacket. So I had to go out and buy a jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is an interesting story that ties in with this Yan Fen. I had one of my brothers had worked with AFIS, Army Air Force Exchange Service.
Mm-hmm.
And he had worked out of Hawaii throughout Asia. And then he was working in Berlin, or not in Berlin, but in Munich, Germany. And I had asked him, I said, well, you've been in Asia, you've been therefore traveling around to the different military bases. Mm-hmm. And do you have any friends in Taiwan that could help me out if I ran into some trouble? Just needed something right away locally. Because I didn't know anyone in Bechtel at the time. I was joining a new company. I was coming from Dallas Transit System, which was then Dallas Area Rapid Transit. And so he gave me 6 names with phone numbers.
Uh-huh.
And so I've got there. So the first day, I've got to get this jacket for the meeting in 2 days. So I start going down my list of phone numbers, and Monica was one of those, and she was the first one that was home.
Yuan Fen. This is the Yuan Fen, Yuan Fen, man.
And you'd carried around this list for how long? How long did you have this list? This list with list of names you'd carried that around for quite some time, right?
I never even called about 4 of the people because I think I called 1 or 2 later on, but I didn't need the list anymore.
Yeah. But you actually had her name in your pocket
on that list.
Well, I had this list of just 6 names with phone numbers. Because when I was in Dallas before I came, I talked to him long distance on the phone and asked for this, and then he just gave it to me.
And at this time, you talked to Monica from Dallas also overseas.
No.
So you didn't make
I talked to her after I was at the Rebar Crown Hotel on Nanjing Dunlu.
Oh, okay.
But now the other side of the story is that Monica didn't know I was coming. Mm-hmm. We had never met each other. She had met my brother when she was studying in Germany.
Okay.
And that's how because he was kind of also got around, and he had a list of people that he had met that were Taiwanese in Germany. So that's where most of the people on that list were from.
We should also add, because a lot of Taiwanese actually went to Germany to study law. And if you look at a lot of Taiwan's law statutes and stuff, a lot of it is
based on German law.
German is really interesting. But sorry for letting me cut you off there. But that's interesting. I want to add that little part into the podcast.
Yeah. So anyway, Monica didn't know I was coming, but she had gone to the fortune teller about 2 weeks before I came. You go to the fortune teller, you ask for 3 things: money, job, and marriage.
Okay.
So she asked for the usual 3 things.
Three things. Yeah.
Now, the fortune teller gave her an interesting statement.
Oh, gotta hear this.
And I'm going to say this. I had to write this down because it's from a Tang Dynasty poem.
Uh-huh.
And
Don't forget to say, I quote, don't forget to say that, okay? Because this is cool. This is the dong of the dong words, all right? Good.
Right. Now, I'm going to say it. I'll probably murder the pronunciation, and maybe James will remember it, because I think you're Chinese. Okay, so the poem is Qing Shui Lo Tai, Shen Tao, yeah.
Oh, goodness. Please don't ask me this. I got to get my other homeboy to do this. But yeah, go ahead.
So but it means whoever is closest to the moon will get the moon. Now, the poem is a Tang Dynasty poem, and a person is by the lakeside. Mm-hmm. He sees the reflection of the moon in the water, and I think he wants to grab it or something. There's people up on the hillside, and the poet is saying whoever is closest to this reflection or so will get it. Mm-hmm. Okay, now, all this tie-in of Yen.
I got to hear this.
So Monica comes to the hotel, and we go over to Asia World, and I buy a jacket. And I ask her, what have you been doing lately? She says she was to the fortune teller. I said, what did the fortune teller say? And she wouldn't tell me.
Set up. Oh, set up. And how'd you move this along? I got to hear this.
Okay, well, now, after I left the hotel and, got an apartment, I was on Fuxing Beilu, right where the Mandarin Hotel was behind us on the other side of Dunhua. And I had it on the 12th floor. And actually, if you stood on the balcony there and saw the moon, you really felt you could grab the moon. Because there were no other buildings around there.
Yeah.
But at the time, Monica had a boyfriend in Boston who was kind of, he was an American. He was kind of a so-so. She had been to see him in that
relationship.
But the way we kind of read this, if you would say Monica is the moon, okay, I'm closer to the moon than the guy in Boston.
Yeah, you see, that is really called Yuan Fen, and it's simple. I'm closer.
I was expecting a story where you took it to the rooftop and said, here we go.
Right.
There's the moon.
And this is the moon.
We're so close now, right?
You got to be metaphorical, Sean.
Metaphorical. No, but you got to be realistic, right?
Actually, our first date was, I don't know if you remember Kiss Disco.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I do.
Kiss La Boca.
Kiss La Boca, that's right.
Kiss La Boca, right? Yeah.
That's right. And that was our first date. Was over because it was near where I lived in that.
Wow.
So,
boy, I'm getting flashbacks.
Yeah,
I'm starting to remember things I don't want to remember now.
Some weird memories from that place.
Because Kiss Disco is unusual because normally you had to go to the combat zone.
Oh goodness, yep.
Right, over by Lin Sen Beilu.
Yeah, and that comes with its own history.
It's got some good stories there as well.
I bet you got a lot of stories, man. But I remember Kiss, boy, that was the spot back in the day, and that's where Michael Jackson actually stayed, I think, while he was here.
Michael Jackson stayed at the Regent.
At the Regent, really?
At Chongshan, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember when he was here.
Yeah. Well, that was another back in the day.
Right.
That's actually before my time, but he certainly made an impression on people in Taiwan.
That was before your time? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm 2000 when I got here.
Oh,
God, a young kid.
Yeah, still a babe.
Right?
Still fresh meat compared to you guys.
So, but anyway, yeah, those were interesting times. And now I brought up to you guys the idea of epiphanies because I want to kind of use this, all lead into, and I had my own series of epiphanies coming to Taiwan, many different ones, and I'm sure you as well. So you can,
we all,
jump in with this, and like one of them I told you was I expect to find factories all over the place. But another one, and if you know my writings, I thought Chiang Kai-shek was a great guy, champion of democracy, all that kind of bullshit.
We are going to bleep that one out too.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No one can stay. No one can stay. Who gets a pass?
But I when I was growing up in the States, I thought I was on top of things. I was involved in the grape boycott. I was involved in civil rights. I was involved in a lot of social movements. But I really wasn't clued into what was overseas for the U.S. I was involved in the anti-Vietnam War thing, the peace movement. But as far as Taiwan, the stuff was there periodically, but it wasn't mainstream media.
Right.
And mainstream media was saying Chiang Kai-shek, all this great stuff. He's fighting for democracy against the communists and this and that. But nothing about the one-party state that he created.
State and the years of the White Terror and
yes, they didn't mention any bicycle kombu or nothing like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like one of my epiphanies was I'm at a party. Okay, we're having a party and social thing and all that. And I was chatting with this one girl and we started talking something about the past, and all of a sudden, she got real angry about, I can't remember what I said, something about the ROC, but she got really friggin' angry. And I think, where's all this anger coming from? But one of her grandparents was killed in her urba.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even know what our urba was.
Right.
Yeah. 228.
228. That's right.
No, I didn't at that time. I didn't know what it was. Yeah.
No.
So I was just saying, well, where's this coming from? Another time on the MRT, one of the guys I was working with on the George side had said, we consider the KMT the last colonizing force that was on Taiwan. And I'm thinking, what?
So the many flags on Taiwan. Yeah.
Right. And there were things. Of course, at that time, the garrison command still walks the streets.
Yes.
Remember those silver helmets?
Yeah, you drive your car and you go through the toll booth and you got the MPs there. Because I remember when I'm, I knew a lot more than most people about the history about Taiwan. And I had to, before I started a conversation, I had to know a little bit about the person before I started raising any type of, opinions about it. I mean, that's something what you're leading to, right?
So what year is this roughly? So 87 martial laws ended.
Right.
So
okay,
you're having this
talking.
epiphany
I was
about,
here. I was, Taipei 88 to 90 was my contract.
Yeah.
Then 91 I went down to Kaohsiung.
And the time of the epiphany when you realized that Chiang Kai-shek wasn't all that you'd been led to believe.
Thought of.
Well, it was in those first 2 years.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so from say 88 through 90, 90 to 91, and that was that was eye opening. I remember another distinctive memory when you go to Xintian.
Xindian, you say Xindian? Mm-hmm.
They used to have guards on the bridges.
Yep.
They had guardhouses there, and you're thinking, this is in the middle of the city. What's a guard doing on the bridge?
Yep.
Yeah.
Along the shoreline, they'd have military patrols, watching, I guess, for saboteurs or whatever coming in. Another distinctive thing was that on the specifications on the MRT, it was any of the underground stations had to be able to withstand a 500 megaton bomb.
Really? I didn't know.
Wait,
that's interesting.
500 megaton?
Or maybe
pound.
Figure a pound.
Your normal World War II big.
When you say bomb, I don't care how big. It's a bomb.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm thinking, why do we need this on an MRT station?
Right.
Kind of and then you find out the background.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually really good to know that, that's why when we have those, yearly air raid drills.
Yes.
And we're told, okay, go into the MRT station because the MRT stations can withstand
I hope
quite a bit of explosive force above them.
And I hope there wasn't any price gouging on those tunnels because we may need, I hope we don't need them one day,
Right.
Well, I think we're going to get into that conversation a little bit later
Okay,
on.
move right along.
Whether are we going to need them?
Yeah, that's right. Are we? This is something that we should talk about, but let's get down to that later. Yeah, go ahead.
No.
Okay, but are we going to have a war?
Oh, yeah, well, this,
Okay, then the cat's out of the bag now.
Go
All
for it, man.
So, chance of war in our lifetime while we're here? The
Yeah.
geopolitical situation right now?
Because
Okay.
I know I see your look. I saw the corner look out of your eyes.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you're just
yeah.
looking at me like, we're going to go this way. But, this is something that, we can share. And you have a lot of opinions on this, I know. Yeah.
No, and I just had a piece recently in the Taipei Times on it. And my piece was a little, I wouldn't say ambivalent, but I didn't quite answer your question. I said, China will not take and control Taiwan. I did not say they would not risk an attack.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things that are in Taiwan's favor and doing this. And you got to go back and look at Taiwan it's an island fortress.
Yeah.
There are very few good landing places.
Except for the highways, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, but then you've got to put a plane there, but
Well, if you look at the highways, based on information that I have, they're designed to actually be a runway. And you can actually see certain fittings on the road that the light posts actually come down. So that's an inside story from my point of view.
Right.
it's not a state secret either.
Oops.
I'm not saying China couldn't attack because you got the South China Sea stuff. But there's about 4 different factors I look at in it. And, one is the fact that Taiwan has changed a heck of a lot from the days of Chiang Kai-shek and Chiang Ching-kuo.
Mm-hmm.
The Taiwanese have a much better sense of being Taiwanese.
Yeah.
Their sense of identity as Taiwanese. If you look, there was a survey done by, I think it's by Genda, from 92 on, of how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as Chinese, as Taiwanese, as both? And the number of people who see themselves as Taiwanese has grown tremendously.
Exponentially,
yeah, basically, yeah.
Those who see themselves as only Chinese has really gone down. The both is, kind of leveled off. But the Taiwan sense of identification, in my mind, it has outgrown the Stockholm syndrome of the martial law era. The Taiwanese see themselves as an independent democracy. I think the way that the Sunflowers reacted to Ma's trying to push ECFA and getting too close ties to China is a very good symbol of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got that, and you've got the fact that Taiwan does have a military, does have a navy. China has a bigger military, but as another friend of mine said, when the U.S. took Okinawa, they had like around 540,000 against 150,000 Japanese, or I can't remember this, but it was a real struggle.
Americans favor that one, but yeah.
In Taiwan's favor is, my mind, Japan. Japan has a lot to lose if China takes Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
They don't say it, but they are very conscious of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the ambiguity of the San Francisco Peace Treaty.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
You have the fact that the U.S., 75 years after the end of World War II, is still officially, quotes, undecided on Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
Maintaining the status quo. We're not going to say
the white papers.
Way.
Yeah.
Strategic ambiguity, but 75 friggin' years of strategic ambiguity, that's a couple generations.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things that are going on. I'll just reference you to my article, but to me, you can get some crazy generals in China. Like one I remember saying, we don't care if the U.S. bombs all the way to Xi'an.
That's right. To see it. That's why I remember this. Yeah, we'll still fight. Even you'll bomb us until Xi'an, right? You will still.
Right.
I mean, if you look at even the situation that happened in Central Europe, during the war, and how U.S. managed to keep everybody up, would that be the same situation for how the U.S. will look at Taiwan? And if we get into any kind of conflict with China, this is the thing that shakes me up.
Yeah, I think, the U.S. is finally waking up, because we had talked a little about this beforehand of why didn't the U.S. treat China the way it treated Russia?
Well, this also adds to the
in
question.
the Cold War.
Yeah, this also replied to something that actually happened last week, where Pompeo actually is proposing to cut off certain type of, like, say, our underground cabling from Hong Kong, moving over to Danshui, which there is a lot of internet traffic goes through Danshui and southern Hongchuan. And China's like, all of a sudden the voice is changing. Oh, we have to do things peacefully now. This is the things that China is now getting shaken about. And this is where Taiwan, like you said, like Japan has a lot to lose in this situation, this region. Not much is coming out of the Philippines' mouth at this time, because they'll say, well, recently they've been saying straight up, they're not equipped to engage in this conflict. They're not equipped.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. And there may be some facts up on this, right? But this point of the U.S. actually restricting some of the international connections to China, this is where Taiwan is like in a special place that they can control a lot of their cohernos. You know what I'm saying, man?
Yeah, no, Taiwan's kind of they've used the metaphor of Gibraltar.
That's
of Asia. And the way Gibraltar covered the entrance to the Mediterranean, Taiwan covers it here.
Well, Taiwan covers the entrance to the Pacific.
It's a big part, yeah.
Yeah. So
this is why, and I've got that in my map book, there's if China takes Taiwan, its submarines have immediate access to blue water. Now, blue water, you would know, is deep blue, Pacific, and all that. The Taiwan Strait is very shallow. And this is where it's interesting. Maps tell you a lot of different things besides just geography. But if you have a map showing ocean depths, the Taiwan Strait is very shallow for submarines.
Because easy to ping them. You know where they are.
Yeah.
And we're talking shallow at a depth of like a maximum of 200 feet, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And, so you've got that. You've got the fact that everything going to Japan and that, or not everything, but most of it flows through the South China Sea.
Funnel to there,
The U.S. is getting very concerned about the South China Sea.
Well, especially with these man-made bogs being built by the next door neighbor, it's shaking, and this is where the other neighbors, like Vietnam, I think 2 days ago, launched a big protest about these little man-made plots of land that's been built out of nowhere.
Yeah. And that, then gives them claim for their 9-dash line. So there's a lot there. And Taiwan, for that reason, they can't afford to lose it.
Yeah. So it's basically he who controls Taiwan controls the Pacific.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as that, but this is it's a gateway.
If Taiwan falls into
gateway,
it's a gateway. I wouldn't say you could. It's a gateway,
right? And
like a lot of the communications to, say, from Japan to Europe, it is run right through here. And when the U.S., I'm going to bring it back to this, starts talking about moving underwater cabling and stuff like that, you really cut into the internet power of what China has right now, whether it's regards to their services or apps or whatever. Even, there's many things you buy here in Taiwan, like a video camera that goes through sometimes Chinese servers. That's a big crutch in their business. And I think that's part of the thing that you alluded to just now, especially with the mapping situation.
Yeah. So I, in my mind, I'm not saying there couldn't be fighting, but Taiwan is very equipped to resist.
To resist.
There are many people. India is now in the game.
Yeah.
That's a whole different
got
podcast.
put a dog in the fight. Yeah.
And that will not want Taiwan to be a part of China. And historically, Taiwan has not been a part of China.
Can I raise my hand here because I have a question? I mean, just back up a little bit and talk about some of the past reliance Taiwan has in China, especially back when you just got here, because a lot of companies found a way of, well, especially Taiwanese companies, you can get cheaper employment, workers in China. You can work them, not 4-hour shifts. You can work them 12, 16-hour shifts. And Taiwan really relied too much. I remember back in the day, some of my Taiwanese classmates here, they go over to China making buku amounts of money, 3 times as much, 4 times as much. But then as years pass, the Taiwanese boss sometimes say, well, for what I'm paying for you, I can hire 4 local Chinese workers. Right. And now I have my friends bouncing back here, but they also decided to open up their own companies now to save face too, because that's a part of it too. What do you think? What are your views on this? When because Taiwan in the past relied so much on China, now it's time to bounce back. There's a lot of. It's not that easy to do, man. I mean,
no, and also, China's a hard place to get money out of.
For real, that's another thing that I didn't want to get into, but it is hard to get your money out of there.
Yeah, and once you've invested, and like if you have a company, I think they have to own 51% of
exactly.
it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So eventually you're going to get squeezed.
That's kind of kind to say squeezed, but yeah, just let it be.
Yeah.
So then the point was, is you think Taiwan is not going to be attacked, and if China does have a go at us, we're going to be relatively safe. What are your thoughts on China at the moment, and what's going on? What do you think is going through their mind? It's a disaster in my mind over there with the floods, the virus, the failure on the India border. Are they not backing themselves in the corner where they just going to have no choice but to attack or accept some sort of
need a distraction?
Change? Yeah.
Okay, of course, China's a big place. So
really?
It's very,
think of a big place and then double it.
So
China, right?
It's hard to just say it's this or that. And also, the Chinese people, in many ways are great people. One of my brother,
the one actually, I probably should make the distinction.
Yeah, please.
The CCP.
Oh, okay.
CCP, not China, not the people of China, the CCP.
Focus there, because the same brother, he's got a Chinese wife in Hawaii. So the CCP, I think in many ways, they're in trouble, because we were here when Tiananmen went down.
Yes, and I was one of the few people that would get the news out to the West. In fact, yeah,
and at that time it was very hard. I had brought my 3 kids over, and we were at a Toastmaster meeting, and someone had come from China, and it's kind of where we first found out about Tiananmen, or we knew about it, but the guy that came from China didn't know about it until he got here.
Did not know about it.
But now news spreads real fast, communications and that. I remember at that time, communications even to the U.S., there was no email.
Yeah,
there was no Facebook.
UCP connection to the US. Yeah, back in the modem days.
You either did a long distance phone call, which was expensive, or you would send a letter, which would be about 2 weeks to get there, 2 weeks for an answer to get back. So communications was like a month apart.
Yeah.
And so I talked to my kids on Facebook, on Skype, regularly, so instantaneous. So that's one factor that in China, I'm sure, even though they got the firewall and everything, the people around China, if Tiananmen went down the same way, they would know about it.
Yeah. It's also an addition. You mentioned India, You mentioned what's happening out here, in the dash line situation. And the former buddies of China, I'm talking about Russia now, is also getting quite nervous because 2 days ago, China is talking about upping its numbers of nuclear missiles, which still won't compare to the United States. But this is also scary too. Then you got South Korea now building their own aircraft carrier now. So, everybody's waking up now. And, it won't be a snap of a finger like we thought it was. This Thanos version that China think they can be is not going to work.
Yeah. And satellite imagery is much better. If you're going to plan an attack,
Right.
You've got to start.
Yeah.
Are we not there now? Are they not big? They're getting the floating army vehicles ready, and they've got a military exercise.
They're moving,
and they've put their pieces into place.
Well, a lot of it also is for show because they know the big brother's watching them.
Yeah,
and a lot of it is bravado and stuff like that. But there's something you can't hide.
How much of this do you think is actual bravado, or it's preparing, getting ready to go?
Or
Me?
could.
I almost claim nothing to know about except the general who said we'd sacrifice everything.
Yes, until Xi'an.
So there is a mindset there. There is a mindset.
I'm sure if you're in Shanghai, you say, what?
Yeah, but once again, a lot of things are said for the media.
A lot of that's posturing as well.
Yes.
But
saber rattling.
I don't want to even go near because sometimes you can get some crazy guys that'll steer the thing. I think Xi Jinping is, even though he's in control, let's talk a little about Hong Kong, because I think that's a real catalyst or significant thing. What they're trying to do and why are the Hong Kongers really resisting? I mentioned this in my article, by 2047, Hong Kong goes back. There's no more one country, two systems. We're all happy brothers. And China always says we play the long game. Well, that's no long game if you're jumping on.
If you're jumping on 20 years.
Yeah, that's not the long
years
game.
In.
I don't know. Did you go to 97, the turnover, or not?
No. I was right here in my warm room. Sorry, I didn't go there.
Okay, we went over there, Monica and I, because we had some friends there, and it was just kind of everyone wanted to be there. So it's a big deal. So might as well say I was there at the turnover. And it was a very festive thing.
I went to the turnover, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
It was festive. There were parties and everything. And it was very peaceful. And then, the promise was in 20 years, you'll have free election. Well, that would have been 2017.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And no way.
In fact, and so 3 years on, they've just reneged on that deal.
Yeah.
And now, there's a responsibility for England to step up into this. There's a breach of contract. This has to go to tribunal or whatever that facility is, and sort it out. Because if China does get away with this, and Hong Kong just is now fully Chinese, then that emboldens them. Right?
It's quite sensitive because of the history of Hong Kong. A lot of people in the West do not know how Hong Kong was. I don't want to say the word leased or leased out to. This is something that most Westerners are not aware of, or the power of the certain families in Hong Kong from southern China, stuff like that. But this is it's sensitive. But the thing is the self-realization of the expectations from this agreement until 47. This is something that's scary. And your views on it, I know you're trying to step back from it right now. I know you're trying to step back from it. Is that what you're trying to say, or what? Is that what you're trying to do? What?
Well, in my mind, if Hong Kong can resist that much, and they know they're supposed to go back in 47,
right?
But why are they being so resistant? And what do they feel they're losing, which they have a good right? They never got their promise. If Hong Kong can do, if China, and they're really coming down hard with this recent thing. That's why I put this on my Facebook thing, I don't even want to transit through Hong Kong.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
no,
None of us do.
no,
None of us do. No.
They said, I'm done. No.
technically, with their new law, they can almost grab anyone. Journalists are at risk. Anyone who kind of says something, and I'm sure they could go back through my writings and say, yes, Mr. Keating, we saw this. You said this about the motherland, and
Don't worry, we got your back.
We are all compromised on that one.
We are.
We're on social media now, so they've got our facial features.
So the international community should be, this is affecting everybody everywhere there. How
Everywhere.
can another country take your right of travel, of freedom
No.
to travel?
yeah, and this tit for tat thing. Those couple Canadians were executed, I think, recently.
Oh, execute. I know
None
two
of
of them. I know two of them are in prison.
2 of them in prison.
Yeah.
On
right.
trumped up charges.
Yeah, because they have to go back to Huawei, and that'd be a whole different show, believe me, because that's a lot of information there.
But yeah, the tit for tat.
Yeah,
And
it is.
so you got that side, and then yet you got the real everyday nice work day. Everyone's friendly, and people that are working there, and they're not bothered at all. So, but there's always that lurking thing that if I want to get you, I can get
I've
you.
got you, yeah. If I want you, I've got you.
How much you think the media is playing into this, or kind of like bouncing things around? Because I'm seeing, like, here in Taiwan, the media just drives me crazy sometimes. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not offending anybody, I hope. But some of this rerun of the same old narrative sometimes, and it's not really teaching people how to think in another way. I mean, have you noticed anything like that?
Okay, well, that's a real good question.
I'm doing my best here.
Yes, we've got a good question.
I'm
then.
trying my best.
I mean, every time, of course, I see the 92 consensus come up, God, that I'm thinking, come on, that thing never existed. Li Dongwei refuses it. Of course, good old Ma Ying-jeou still trying to hang on. But this gets into my paradigm thing that Ma Ying-jeou has this paradigm fix on one China, and the ROC is the legitimate one China, etc. And Taiwan is part of the ROC. And,
It's kind of like floating a little bit in many, mystical ways and stuff like that. But you really explained that well in one of your speeches on YouTube, which you can find everywhere.
A lot of people having a good time in China and, having no problems, but there's always that possibility. And this is what, I just look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong used to be one of my favorite places to go. I really always enjoyed going to Hong Kong in the early 90s, before 97, but, then after 97, not as much. But now I would not go to Hong Kong.
I wouldn't, if I have to take a flight out of here, that involves stopping in Hong Kong and even staying in that side of the airport, I wouldn't want to do that. I would not want to land in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Sean
There's Macau.
Kateri. Oh, he's transiting. We'll meet him at the plane.
They're pinged in my face. Because it's got, you put your passport in. There we go. That person's coming through. Because I think they're up to that sort of technology now where it doesn't matter what name you go through. They're grabbing your face.
Yeah.
Right.
But can we bounce a little bit back down to the media situation? Because you mentioned in one of your writings, and I quote here, Taiwan democracy and the cult of personality.
Oh, yeah.
Because we know how China through the days have had their personality promotions of whoever's the leader. Even though there's a lot of things going on, even today in China, the Xi Jinping and the Jiang Zemin family faction and all that stuff. I can go deep into that myself, but what about that type of personality playoff or trait here in Taiwan? Because, we've been through Chiang Kai-shek and all this. How much do you see that affecting the mind or the mind of the regular Taiwanese, especially the younger generation?
Okay, yeah. The cult of personality is a real good thing to examine. And, certainly like with Mao, with Chiang Kai-shek, even Zhangjiaguo, it has been there. And in my mind, I also even say, there's some people in the U.S., believe it or not, who have a cult of personality with Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't see how, but, they will believe anything Trump says.
There's a cult of personality about Obama as well. And, I guess most leaders in the world Jacinda Ardern has a cult of personality.
Yes.
Yeah. In Russia had the problem with Stalin, with, Putin now. I'm against the cult of personality. The longer you live, and I've, longer than you do guys, you really all men have. Okay, I've lost something here.
Okay, just keep going.
Okay. Again.
Okay.
You realize all men have feet of clay, so that you should not worship any man, no matter who it is, whether it's this leader, whether it's the Pope, whether it's this religious leader, whether it's anyone.
John Lennon, Bob Marley, if we're going to throw them in as well.
Oh, don't throw Bob Marley in there, man. You can't do that. I'm hurt.
Well, it's one rule for all or for none, right?
Okay.
So,
some people make good decisions at the right time and at the right moment, and they should be recognized for that. But no one is that clean.
Realistic.
And so there should never be a cult of personality among the leader of any country. And I'm talking about any country, U.S., Canada, New Zealand, wherever, or China, or Russia.
Fiji, just to throw it out there.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
So that's I'm really, again, this gets to paradigms. I hate to keep coming back to paradigms, but
good, because we want to get into paradigms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because my paradigm book, and let me kind of flash that baby up here.
There you go. Right over this camera.
I don't know, where is it going? I'll let you
right
take
here.
it.
Here you go.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll focus that in there.
Link below to how you buy it.
There you go. Right
Okay.
here.
But that stems all the way back to my doctoral dissertation, interestingly enough, because my doctoral dissertation is on the concept of identity in the U.S., and I take three different primary writers. Jonathan Edwards, who's a Puritan, 18th century. Ralph Waldo Emerson, who is transcendentalist, 19th century. And Alfred North Whitehead, who is a British philosopher, mathematician philosopher, but did most of his writing in the U.S. And I analyzed each how they viewed personality in identity. And to do that, then you have to get into their gestalt, their Weltanschauung, their worldview of how they perceive and the whole world and the paradigm that they follow.
Mm-hmm. To get into their heads.
Basically,
for all the big words out there.
Yeah, that's what, get into their heads.
Get into their heads.
Yeah.
Well, what I found in there was interesting was that even though Edwards is a Puritan, of course, the Puritans are really, I don't know, you might not know American history, but you would know American history.
don't he's not guaranteeing that, but go ahead.
And the Transcendentalists were a complete reaction against them. But when you analyze their basic paradigms, they both did not give much to the individual identity.
Oh.
For Jonathan Edwards, it was God, and for Emerson, it was the oversoul.
Mm-hmm.
But the oversoul shone through man. It was Whitehead with process philosophy who gave the individual much more interaction and play in determining things. That in process thought, everything affects everything else. Some things greater than others, but everything, there's two things. Everything is in process, therefore change, development.
Right. In flux.
Yeah, in flux. Either can be going up, going down, can be going in a spiral fashion, but it's narrow. It's not a return. You never get a cyclical view of history.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like return to the old
Never.
Middle
there's
Kingdom
no going
or
back.
whatever.
Never.
Yeah.
Restore the Middle Kingdom. And everything affects everything else, and everything is affected by everything else around it in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that got my ultimate ideal, which I never fulfilled, was that, I had these three elements were very influential in U.S. thinking. The Puritan is a very strong influence. The Transcendentalist, Emerson and Thoreau, definitely.
Yes.
And Whitehead process thought. And then I wanted to do a book which would then bring in the Spanish influence, the black influence, W.E. Du Bois, and all that.
Yes.
All that, and all these different elements that went into the American psyche. And I never did fulfill that dream, but it did come out in the Paradigm, because the Paradigm book is when you begin to realize that all these guys have a concept of community. Mm-hmm. Now, in this, there's three basic paradigm realms: physics, science, which we, always are involved in developing. Mm-hmm. But physics and science never tell you anything about the meaning of life. Teleology, the purpose, the meaning of life. Mm-hmm. For that, you've got to go to metaphysics and phenomenology. Metaphysics, you have religion, you have nationalism.
Marxism, yeah.
All that, all those things, and they deal with how you live in community. Mm-hmm. Phenomenology is how you are as an individual, and kind of like, I don't give a bleep what the rest of you guys think. This is what I, as an individual, see the world, and this is how it affects me.
No, so that's the spirit aspect. Your soul, your
right, and how you got to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a constant dialectic between the individual and community, no matter what religion you're in or so. Mm-hmm. And there's also fights between the different communities.
Yes.
But as an individual, you're also always in dialectic with the community. The community says, you should live this way.
I like when you wrote this African proverb. You said, until lions have their historians, the tales of the hunter always glorify the hunter.
Right.
I love that.
I love that too.
Man.
And to me, that is Taiwan. I use that for Taiwan, the struggle for democracy. Because, Taiwan's story from the past through martial law and all the white terror has always been the hunter, the KMT.
Mm. Yes.
And now the lion, Taiwan, keeping with the metaphor, is starting to tell its own story. And that's what my book, Taiwan, the Struggle for Democracy, is about, how the lion starts telling its story, the Taiwanese thing. Now, part of this Taiwan story that still is untold is the Austronesian part.
And that was going to say that this is where the paradigm shift is coming as we're working out Taiwan being the motherland of all the Austronesian peoples, which spreads from Taiwan all the way down to New Zealand, out across to Hawaii, into Easter Island, and through across into Madagascar, which is a huge influence of peoples, began right here. And we're just starting to understand that connection, and we're figuring out all this lost history. In the back of one of your books, you've got that quote,
right. Now,
we're Chinese, we've got 5,000 years of history.
Some people are going to argue with you how you use the word began. In other words, there were migrations all the way through, but the Lapita culture and everything, there was around 5,000 years ago, even though the Austronesians had gone up and spread, the Taiwan influence came back down and spread. So that's an interesting, and I'm going to turn that over to the anthropologists.
and that's going to be a constant argument there. But what I'm looking at simply in that one is that there's a genetic link with the New Zealand Maori and with some of the
I knew he'd
Taiwanese.
bring in New Zealand.
New Zealand, you know?
Yeah, that's he yells at that.
Do they turn up in your maps? It's a little
Yeah,
joke
That's
we
that's
have,
the,
right?
that's the Sean Key, you know. Yeah, do they show up in your maps? Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We've got the Bellwood map and that No, I've got a story in an article in my latest book on that is an epic that needs to yet be told. And I talk about epics a little bit. We've got like the Greeks have their epic of the two epics of the Trojan War, and then Odysseus coming back. The Romans, Virgil, the Aeneid, he has to tie their epic in with the Greek epic. So Aeneas comes out, flees the Trojan War, goes to Africa, Dido in Carthage, but he has to leave her because he's got to found the city of Rome.
Wow, so romantic.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad romantic.
Yeah.
Dido commits suicide.
He offed himself. Sorry, but moving right along.
But but anyway, they have these epics to talk about how the thing, and this is part of what Taiwan needs to do. It's an epic in search of an author. We need an author and we need one author for the epic of the out of Africa whole thing. What made all these different groups go out of Africa and go different places? Another epic I feel is needed is how they crossed the Bering Strait, the Americas, the whole population of there, and great empires were built there. The Aztecs, the Mayan culture, and all that.
Well, you get the Clovis culture. The really early Americans that disappeared around the same time as all the megafauna disappeared.
This guy knows everything.
The times of the mammoths were now running around. There was a people there called the Clovis. And at the same time, the mammoths and the mastodons and all those big beasts disappeared. They were wiped out and no longer exist. But we've found, layers of indication of, the mammoth hunters.
Yeah, so these are epics that need to be written. I don't know who's going to write them. I can't write them. But we also need an epic of the Austronesian and its relationship to Taiwan. And Sean, maybe that's your job.
Sean's going to write it.
Well, I'm going to be part of that story, at least going to be a player.
Sean, he has a lot
of that story.
He has a lot of things in his head right now.
Yeah, and these are things that have to be told. Now, the other thing that comes in my paradigm book, though, is that you got to, in this constant thing of individual and community and also all the different communities, you cannot have tribalism, or you got to overcome tribalism. Because in my mind, and this was how in the 1500s, when the people started to come to Taiwan, the indigenous people were about 98% of the population.
Yes.
The colonizers were about 2%. Today, it's completely flipped.
Yes.
Yeah.
The indigenous are about 2%. The colonizers, even though they have a lot of indigenous blood, are 98%.
And I like that idea that we have to get over tribalism. And that's one of the issues in Taiwan with the indigenous people is you've got all these distinct tribes, different languages, different stories, different myths. But what's happening now is they're realizing their connection to the Maori in New Zealand, who were a bunch of different tribes. And the way the Maori became powerful and kind of united, they said, okay, look, we've all just got to be one people. We have to unite and get out of this mindset that we are X number of different tribes. And that is why the Maori are now a political and cultural force in New Zealand.
Yeah. And you don't have to sacrifice your identity, but you've got to find a way to work in community. And again, look at the Indians in America.
Yes.
They could have wiped out the colonizers if they were united.
Well, this is the same thing if you even look at Africa. Between the Africans, they were taking each other as slaves in a lot of places. I know it's going to make a lot of people angry, but it's true. And when you have a society, chewing among themselves. When somebody comes out comes from outside to eat your dinner, you're not prepared to fight. And this is something that Sean knows a lot about. And do you really, Sean? I'm going to throw this back to Sean. Do you think this is an element right now in Taiwan? Because there's different tribes here.
There's different tribes here, and under certain agreements by the UN, they all have the right to create autonomy. Right? That passage is written in the UN. It is there. They have that right, but it is incredibly difficult to find unity even within each and individual tribes, because you've got I say is four different aspects. You've got 2 different Christian religions, which are messing up the family, and then 2 different political factions: the DPP, the KMT, the Protestants, and the Catholics, which have so ingrained within the tribe, it's impossible for these tribes even to come together as a tribe and work it out as a tribe.
But you shouldn't say impossible, because that's not a word you use, right?
Well, nothing is impossible, but so far it has not really been achieved. The Saishat, my wife's tribe, they've done it. They got through all that, but they're a very, very small tribe, right? Okay. They're only 4,000 or 5,000 people. But the larger tribes, they've not been able to do it yet.
Yes.
I'm not saying yet, but they all, then once you get all the tribes together, then they all have to come in under one identity.
Sean, how much time do we have left, though?
Well, the doc made me feel.
The doctor's here.
No, the doctor made me feel pretty good about the fact that China really has no chance of taking us. So long as we can keep China out of the picture, we're left alone. We're going to be okay. We will do it. And we will be that example. Yeah, well, I have much hope.
For me, I don't let my 掉以轻心. I just don't let my guard down.
What's the SAC thing? Eternal vigilance is the price of freedom.
Oh, I wish I could give you a high five, but we have to maintain our social distancing. Sean, there's some stuff that I know that you want to talk to the doctor about that's has to do with movies, man.
Oh, right. So Jerome was in a Scorsese film. A small part. You're there. It's a blink and a miss a part, but you got to spend a few days on set. So let's have a little talk about how was that working on a Scorsese film?
Yeah.
Were you
the Scorsese film.
Were you directed by him?
Oh, you're so casual about it. Oh, the Scorsese film. That little nothing.
Right?
Okay. I was 3 days on set.
3.
And I had my time on set is about 1 minute, maybe at the most. 30 seconds to 1 minute.
30 seconds. Oh, screen time in a Scorsese movie.
But
I'm cracking up.
And a lot of the guys in Taiwan are in that film. We got paid minimal wages, but you did it because you wanted to say, I was in a Scorsese film.
But it was no part for me. I don't know. I could have played something. I don't know.
No, there was one point when the casting call went out. We need as many black people as you can find, Sean.
Really?
And
Sean did not call me.
How's that for a buddy, huh?
Right?
He cut you out.
That's all right.
But I love that film, and sometimes I've given presentations about stuff that have been made in Taiwan films, and I always compare that one to Lucy. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I compare it this way because I went to some of the press conferences with Jean-Luc Godard and all that. Mm-hmm. Now, both of those films had a budget of about $50 million US. Okay?
Which is not a lot of money, really.
So was it a 50 or 15?
50.
50, yeah.
50 million US. Okay. Now, Lucy has grossed about 450 million US at least.
Ooh.
No.
Tremendous. Scorsese's film has not even made budget.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
No.
You can Google it.
You can Google it. Nobody watched this film.
Okay,
You know,
is it the topic that's so hot or what, man?
it just says something about the public, about what they're interested in: action flicks, a kick-ass woman.
An explosion. It's Scorsese, right? So
It's not a Michael Bay movie.
it's
That's
not a
what you're
Michael
saying.
Bay movie. It's a Scorsese film that came out right after Wolf of Wall Street, which is one of the most excessive, glorious drugs, sex, rock and roll, pure hedonism, madness film. And it's a wonderful film, but
Sean has a way with adjectives.
but his return film to that, and I feel that was a little bit intentional, was like, because maybe he crossed a line with the Wolf of Wall Street, because he is a religious person. He's a man of faith. He believes in God. He went to church. He's got his mum. Check yourself.
Okay.
So he made this very slow, placid, deeply spiritual, deeply questioning film about faith and one's responsibility to yourself and to God, and responsibility to people who follow the religion. And it's a slow burn film. Every camera angle was really slow and meditated, and it's a meditation. It's a real study, and it's not the Scorsese that people have come to expect.
It's a meditation.
It's a meditation, right? And therefore, that's why people didn't go to see it. But then anyone who says they love film, they love Scorsese, they need to go and see this film. Otherwise, they cannot claim themselves to be a fan.
You told me yesterday that years from now, people will rush back to this movie.
Oh, yeah. It'll be discovered in 20 years after his death, and he'll get no credit for it. He'll have missed that one.
No, because it really deals with the struggle of faith and that of the different people. Now, I'll give you a story on that one where I really dropped the ball. Okay.
and you're getting it here. Okay.
Okay. Right. See, so we're in our trailers getting our makeup, and we've got our wigs on and all that. And the guy that's going to be on set with me, we're sitting side by side getting our makeup done and all that. Andrew Garfield walks in,
Spider-Man,
the trainer, but he's in costume, and I don't recognize him. I just think he's another one of these local groupers. So I basically ignore the guy. And I missed a beautiful chance, because we're in there in about an hour, getting our stuff done. The gals are tripping around us and all that. And we're just chatting away, the guy and I, and we're chatting a little with the girls and that. But another way I'll also say credit Andrew, when he was on set, he really focused, and his mind, I think, was always thinking on his role and that. Mm-hmm. So he just, went down to his seat, which was 2 down from me, sat to get his stuff done. And that's why, I just thought, he's another one of us, So
that's an extra.
Afterwards, and even when he'd be walking by on the set and we'd be on the side waiting for our time on, he just was very focused. Wasn't wouldn't be high-fiving you or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So he was very concentrated on his role, and he had a very heavy role.
And it's a fantastic performance from him, and that's when I got to, wow. You're not just that guy from Spider-Man, because, frankly, I thought Spider-Man was a bloody horrible film, a bloody horrible performance. But then he drops this great performance. And within the same year, he does that Mel Gibson film about another man of faith. And that film, everybody went to see. And it's Mel Gibson. And Mel Gibson is supposed to be the pariah of Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Don't touch Mel.
Yeah.
But that was Mel's comeback. And there's a lot of similar themes in both movies, but that one had the good big bangs.
Right? We'll be responsible for the rebirth of the movie.
So, but no, I think it's a great film. I recommend anyone to see it, and especially if you are Christian. But it's I was one of the friend of mine, Eli Alberts, who was here. He uses it in a class because it deals with the different cultural things, because the way the Japanese culture sees the missionaries, but also sees the other powers.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, there's an interesting, the Japanese, wasn't the shogun, but one of the top officials.
Yeah.
He's talking with Garfield and his thing, and he's telling him why they don't want Christianity in. And he says, he uses a good analogy that he will then explain to Garfield's character. He says, well, to say this ruler has 4 concubines, and the concubines are always fighting with each other. And so finally, the ruler decides to kick the concubines out and stay with his own wife. And he says, what do you think of that? And Garfield says, I think it's a wise man. And he says, well, this is Japan. The concubines are the Dutch, the Spanish, the Portuguese, and the British. And they're always fighting with each other. And if we let them into Japan, they will eventually destroy the country. And if you know the history, in 1635, Japan does shut itself off, which is a little bit after the Portuguese have been in there a while and that, but they're moving in that direction. But it's an interesting analogy, and seeing how these cultural differences are playing and how they realize the threat from the West coming in
the doors.
And then the religion is because, and then you see the different, how Liam Neeson's character, who had been there and apostatized, and Garfield goes there with his friend to, find out what happened to their previous missionary teacher, who had always been, very strong in spreading the faith. So a lot of real interesting cultural things there, religion, faith, people.
And a fascinating discussion on your responsibility to having faith, right? And because Garfield's character sees himself as a savior, as a white savior going into Japan, right? He sees himself as the Jesus, and he believes that he must suffer for his belief, as Jesus did, and must make that sacrifice. So the Japanese then go, well, that's not the way to get into, because you want that to happen, then we'll start killing your disciples, your followers, and put them through, horrible, horrible tortures. And so then they basically, look, it will end. Their suffering will end if you just step on, the Bible and say, I don't believe anymore. But he refuses to do that.
Okay, you let me know too much, because I haven't seen the movie yet. Okay, I'm going to get to it. Yeah. No, very well worth it. And, a lot of interplay on all sorts of things that I would see there and I can identify with that very easily, because I keep hitting into paradigms, but, the Christians have their paradigm of what the world is and why that's their job to save the world. And
the Japanese have their paradigm why they don't need them there.
It's how this is a threat to our paradigm. And then also, of course, the Dutch and the British and the Spanish and the Portuguese have their own paradigms that, sometimes like the Spanish and the Portuguese will be united in religion, Catholicism. The Dutch and the British will be united more in a Protestantism, but then they will also fight over the thing. Now, this brings me to the Spice Islands. I'm going to turn around to this.
This is interesting, yeah.
Because how this, can we flash this up here, okay?
Let me put this up here. Let's see.
And this cover of the book. Now, this map here, this is a Dutch map, and it's just a part of it, but I've whited out the Philippines here.
Well, that's going to make him happy.
White, oh, goodness.
No, because I wanted to show the relationship of the Spice Islands to Taiwan. Now, the Western powers come to Asia primarily for the Spice Islands. And 100 years later, they realized there's money to be made in Taiwan.
Right.
Now, the spices used to flow into Europe along the Silk Road, up, from the Spice Islands, which are below the Philippines. And then when the Ottoman Turks took over the whole eastern half
Spain
of the
to Portugal.
Mediterranean,
Yeah.
they blocked that flow, or they could regulate it, charge or block it. Venice and Genoa had been the competing powers at that time, but then they lose their strength. Spain and Portugal.
Yep.
Are on the
That's right.
outer side. Portugal realized, and they've been making sea developments in their ships, they realize they can go down around Africa.
Yes.
And because they have the Treaty of Tordesillas, where they will not fight. The Pope regulates this treaty. They will divide, access to the Spice Islands. So you take about 300 miles west of the Canary Islands, and that they draw the line. Anything on that side is Spain. Anything on this side is Portugal. So that's why Portugal goes around Africa to Goa and then over to the Spice Islands. Spain has to go west, Columbus.
Yeah, and his bad maps.
And this is why also, though, when you go to South America, that treaty line cuts through Brazil, which sits out. Why Brazil is the only South American country that speaks Portuguese.
Right.
Everyone else speaks Spanish. So, and all these things are tied there. But, okay, so they're getting access to the Spice Islands. All sorts of wars are fought over the Spice Islands nowadays, but then they finally figure out you can grow these trees somewhere else.
1580s about, right?
After that, because the Dutch and the British fight, and one of the unusual quirks that comes of that is that the Dutch, the British, the British gives the Dutch the Isle of Run, which is in the Spice Islands, and in exchange, the British get the Isle of Manhattan. Because the Dutch had been in New Amsterdam, which is now New York. And, it kind of, you can look like, well, 300 years later, who got the better deal?
Yeah.
And, the Spice Islands now, they're nothing. They're a little bit of tourism or anything, but they're,
they were so
they were the
fundamentally
gold
important.
pot at one time. Now, 300-400 years later, this is, you get into, paradigm shifts and thoughts and everything that, fascinating stuff.
So what do you think is the final paradigm shift? I know in one of your writings you said to the people who come after me, to my grandchildren, to my great-grandchildren, whoever we're up to, there has to be a paradigm shift. It's on to us. What do you think is
in my book, I recommend, I push 2 paradigm shifts. One is that we have to go from a global village, which still has a lot of zero-sum competition, to a global home on Earth. This affects environmentalism. If you have a global home concept paradigm of Earth, it's our home. No room in the house gets trashed.
Okay.
We've got to respect environmentalism. And also in the global home, we're all one family.
四海一家.
The Star Trek paradigm.
So this affects capitalism. We need a more equitable, socialistic economy, which doesn't have this zero-sum competition, which doesn't have the rich and the poor. You got to think like family and one house.
Yeah.
Now, the second paradigm shift that comes from this, in a way, and that we're already started on, our destiny is our galaxy. That, we've already put things on Mars. It's interesting. I was reading that 2 rovers we have 1 rover on Mars now. The Chinese have sent one. It'll land there next year. And we have another one we've sent up there. Will land. We put landed things on comets. You know, we've been on the moon. You see, in a way, even from almost, and call it a ecological way, if we want to preserve our planet, we've got to get our minerals from maybe a planet where there's no one living.
Yeah.
So you get into now stuff like, was it Dune or something?
Yes,
you know,
Dune.
and so
I remember Dune.
there's all sorts of future troubles, but that's the paradigm shift that
We've got to get ready to leave.
Yeah.
Right? To infinity and beyond.
And like the commercial says, we are family.
We are one
That's
family.
right. 我们是一家人 now. That's right.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Keating. It's been wonderful talking to you. We're definitely going to be getting you back on the show again.
Just for real. We got to get you back. We got to get you back.
Okay. I feel like we hardly scratched the surface on things.
Well, that's what we do here. That's what we do here.
1.5 hours down of 365 more to go.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for, taking the time to join us here in this little tiny room here, someplace in Taiwan. And, we look forward to hearing from you again. And, all the stuff's going to be in a link right down there with the books and everything. And I'll link some other pages that you can find some more information. And Sean, would you take us out here, man?
Okay. So once again, thank you very much.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to chat with you guys.
And if you've made it this far, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, share.
Pass the word.
Leave us a comment. Tell us what you thought about it.
That's right.
See you next time.
See you next time.